Welcome to True Health Tuesday, and the truth will set you free. Okay, tonight, this is a shout out to one of my patients. I just got back from Thailand, which has anybody here been nose raped? Okay. It's called a PCR test? Okay, good. Yeah, I had to do 5 of them in 10 days. It was ridiculous, okay? Luckily, you're able to get over there with just being nose raped. And, you know, if you're getting nose raped, ask them to do it yourself. Put a little hydrogen peroxide in there before, so you're guaranteed to get a negative. But it was just insane. But anxiety and depression, a mechanical distortion. I'm going to show you how to regenerate the neurons in the brain, and also how to change the brain function and structure. Now, the second half of this, we're going to talk a little bit about hope. Now, I don't know if you've seen, but tonight they actually relaxed the mask mandate where our king lives. I mean, not king. What's the guy that steals all the votes to get? Oh, yeah, our president. Okay, yeah. So they just said now you can take it off if you want. Okay, so we're going to talk about some stuff that is challenging, particularly with the media. Although, if you look at all the stuff, and all the stuff we can't mention, like lab origin and all the other stuff, okay, before you'd get killed and you were a domestic terrorist, now they're saying, well, yeah, it kind of looks that way. Okay, all this is going to be on the Dr. B VIP. So thank you for everybody who's supporting us there. You're super appreciated. Victor doesn't work for free. Extreme Health Academy, I did a 2-hour webinar with them on Sunday. We do this every month. I answer questions all the time. But man, it was fun. If you have health issues, that's a good group to join. Now, this is where I was speaking in Thailand. I'm not going to show all the old home movies and stuff because I know how boring that would be. If I could get everybody popcorn, you'd probably find it interesting. But this is where we were speaking. And at first they said all the speakers have to wear masks. Everybody's going to wear masks. It's going to be oppressively hot. It wasn't that hot. It was really pleasant. Okay, and about half the people weren't wearing masks, and afterwards and before, we're talking to them, hugging and kissing, and it's like friggin' amazing. This is the giant statue at the Grand Temple, and these guys are impressive. I had to take a picture of the one in the airport who had a mask, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this deity could kick ass on anyone. It's like, did you hear the story about Chuck Norris and the COVID-19? Yeah, Chuck kicked his ass. Okay, suicide. The number one thing when you're looking at anxiety and depression, this is a result you want to avoid. Okay, if you are planning this, if anyone, and I'm telling you, I've been there before, where dying was better than living. Okay, and this is harsh. Talk to someone. Suicide prevention line. Don't wait. Get in there. Talk to somebody. Because it's too many things are happening now, and it's always better to talk to a friend. Statistic-wise, and this is 2007 to 17, we're looking at a massive rise, and this was before the insanity of social distancing, covering your face, losing social communication, isolating, job loss. This was before that. Suicide rates through the roof. Now, trends in suicide behavior among high school students. Now, we're looking at Black boys 5 to 11 have experienced an increase in suicide rates and death. Now, remember, this is in 2017. Childhood maltreatment, mental concerns, depression, neurocognitive deficits. All of these, and this has been going on before societal shutdown. Okay, which means that if you're aware of this, they stopped physical education in a lot of schools. If kids are not moving, okay, they get poor brain function. If they're limiting oxygen, they're getting poor brain function. If they can't touch, if they can't hug, I mean, parents, if when you were in first and second grade, your first and second grade teacher hugged you. Okay, they can't do that anymore. So the loss of human-to-human connection and interaction is horrific. 39% up in winter, and this is the NBC News. I mean, it's just crazy. So what is this? There's 3 stressors that have to be addressed when you're talking about anxiety, stress, and depression. And we're going to go through some of the myths, because have you ever heard of brain chemistry? That it's a brain chemistry issue? Yeah, it's not. Okay, that's a lie. But there is physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress. The weird thing is your body responds the exact same way to all 3. And so all 3 got to be addressed. Why? Because all 3 of those stressors affect the autonomic nervous system. That means when you're being emotionally upset, fight or flight kicks in. Like when you're standing at the queue and you know you're going to have something shoved up your nose, fight or flight kicks in. Okay? I'm sorry, that was just a recent experience. Not a big fan of that. Okay, but also that rest, digest, and repair. So to regenerate your tissue, you have to have a balanced autonomic function. Now this was a great article, 2013. Autonomic dysfunction is the motor of critical illness, regardless of etiology, regardless. It doesn't matter the source of what you consider the chronic illness or disease. It doesn't matter. Okay, underlying it is the autonomic adaptation or the autonomic change that's associated with that. So if you think the traffic accident caused it, no, it's the it's the autonomic reaction to it. It's that fight or flight, and that's why you have to address the nervous system disorder. I'm telling you, when I was in Thailand, and I'm talking before all these doctors and looking at all these different clinics because I want to set up a school. Okay, doctor, are you looking at the autonomic function? Doc, are you measuring autonomic function in digestive disorders? Doc, are you measuring autonomic function in high blood pressure or depression or anxiety or rheumatoid arthritis? Are you measuring autonomic function? None of them are. So you got to look at it. Now, has anyone ever heard that the science is settled? Okay, that's complete BS because science is never settled. So I want to bring this up because this is out of Archives of Psychiatry, Scandinavia, 2001. So 2001, that was 21 years ago. So we've learned some stuff. But listen to this. They want to see if taking a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor or an antidepressant causes an increase in violence. And they said all published papers on Medline databases linking serotonin were reviewed for aggression. Now, what do they say? A small portion of patients treated with SSRIs become distressed, agitation, and occasionally that's the side effect of the antipsychotics. It does show an increase in anxiety in the initial phase, but no increase in susceptibility to aggression or suicidality. In the absence of convincing evidence linking selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors causally to violence and suicide, the recent lay media reports are potentially dangerous. Remember, there's no fire here. Don't look at it. Unless you look at this one 3 years later. It's kind of like if you had mask requirements and fear 2 years later, and then 1 year later, and it's only flattened the curve, and now we're 3 years into it. Now you can take it off. Okay, suicidality and violence. Evidence from many sources confirms that selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors commonly cause or exacerbate a wide range of abnormal mental and behavioral conditions. Mild agitation, manic psychosis, agitated depression, obsessive preoccupations, it can result in suicidality, violence, and other forms of extreme abnormal behavior. Isn't that interesting? Couple of years apart, completely, totally different information. Okay, what about the black box warning on one of these SSRIs? What on the antidepressant? Prozac. Warning: suicidality, antidepressant drugs, antidepressants in children, adolescents, and young adults, and other short-term studies of major depressive disorder. Anyone considering the use of Prozac and other antidepressants and child, adolescent, and young adult must balance the risk with clinical need. Balance the risk with clinical need. Now, Prozac, do you know how it works? I just said like 3 times, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Guess what? It's unknown. Dude, I think this does something with serotonin, but It does increase suicidality and suicidal risk, but here, of course, it hasn't been studied longer than 13 weeks, and it does have this list of effects. So does anyone think that you're having anxiety, stress, and depression because you're not taking enough drugs? Is anyone talking about the gut-brain connection, the enteric brain? Is anyone talking about the three stressors? Is anyone talking about the sympathetic dominant state? Well, plus, if you're put on these drugs, within 5 years, you have a 50% risk of turning to bipolar. Bipolar disorder is way more severe. Think of this. If you had a stick, a splinter in your leg, okay, and I gave you a pain reliever, but I left it in there. If I gave you morphine and I left it in there, okay, does anyone think a splinter in the leg is from lack of medications? No, but that's the same thing. See, when people have like a broken arm, man, it's there. But we have such a weird relationship with anxiety and stress. Oh, pick yourself up. Okay, you got some depression? Yeah, if you've been there, you can't. But when we look at this, the role of hippocampus in the pathophysiology of bipolar disorder, wait, so that means that there's structures in the brain that are reacting to possibly contribute to this. Omega-3 fatty acid deficiencies. Wow. Optimal intakes of omega-3 fatty acids in early development and adulthood shows considerable promise in preventing aggression and hostility. And DHA and EPA may lower serotonin levels at critical periods of neurodevelopment and may result in a cascade of suboptimal development of neurotransmitter system, eliminating the regulation of the limbic system by the frontal cortex. Now, this is huge because when we look at this, the frontal cortex is anxiety, stress, impulse control, and schizophrenia. Now, healthy fats. What does your body do with fats? Well, it makes hormones. You take the fatty acids from the fats, and you can literally produce every glucocorticosteroid, minocorticosteroid, sex hormone, everything out of this. So fats, and 50% of your brain is fat. I mean, unless you're a politician, then it's 100%. Okay, but so wow, and look at this, a keto diet program. Why would healthy fats help you? And this helps in epilepsy, headaches, depression, sleep disorders, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. So all these central nervous disorders. So healthy fats are good for you. Now, our children right now, if we took a poll, this is an older one out of 2009 and 2011, so we're looking at 10 years past. And this is, again, pre those insane restrictions where students are in class surrounded by a plastic shield, wearing a face mask, not being able to touch their friends. I mean, luckily, a lot of schools didn't follow along with that, and there's no difference. I mean, when you look at every therapy, there is a risk and a benefit. Okay, great. You're not going to spit on your friends. Okay, what's the risk? Psychological harm for the rest of your life. Top military leaders report 7 in 10 young Americans, 70 to 24, are unfit to serve in the U.S. military because of obesity, asthma, hearing, sight problems, and mental illness. 70% of our workforce are kids. Now, way back when, and you got to look at history, if you understand what depression is, when they say black bile, melancholy, okay, that's what it feels like. It feels like there is nothing. That breathing is an effort. Now, the 17th century, look at this guy's recommendations in the 17th century. A healthy diet, sufficient sleep, music, and meaningful work, along with talking about the problem with a friend. He was more advanced than most doctors today. No, the doctor today, if they're not thinking, if they're not critical thinking, if they're not looking at the actual cause, they're going to give you a drug that they don't know how it works, and the side effect is suicide and suicidality. They're not going to look at the gut-brain connection. They're not going to look at any of this. So we've got the perfect storm. You got to take in nutrients, but the food that we're taking in, is it healthy? Is it organic? Is it fresh? Is it seasonal? Is it live? Or is it packaged, processed, and genetically modified? The genetically modified foods literally can destroy your normal gut flora, and that's where neurotransmitters are produced. Do you have bowel movements 2 to 3 times a day? You know what patients will say? No, doc, once a day. And I do that because I take a ton of herbs. Well, that means you're probably in a really stressed state. Movement. Movement is a vitamin. You figure every time you move your body, you're stimulating the small brain in the back called the cerebellum. And lack of movement causes abnormal stimulation, and that causes frontal lobe dysfunction. Minimum half hour a day. An hour a day would be better. Hang with me. We'll adjust for 3 or 4 hours, and then we'll run around the rest of the clinic, and we'll do that. I start at 5:30 in the morning. I'll be working here tonight till 8 o'clock. Anyone want to join me? No, that's a stupid schedule. Don't. It'll kill you. But I only do it 1 day a week, and the rest of the time I'm just 12 hours. So movement's huge. Social and mental health. Do you have time for yourself? Do you unplug? Do you have time for your family? And you schedule time for yourself. You schedule time for your family. God, that's beautiful. What about life being out of balance? You're pushed and shoved one side and the other. Healthcare. Is your healthcare choices, are they working with the natural body processes? Are they designed to stimulate how your body regenerates, how you eliminate, how you sleep, how you move? Or are they of the pharmaceutical version, where they give you a chemical to alter your physiology, and then they give you another chemical to take care of the side effects of that first chemical, and never addressing the underlying problem? This is what gives us 1 in 3 with heart conditions, 1 in 2 with cancer, 1 in 4 with depression. This is the type of society we're in. Rise of degenerative diseases. And again, we're looking at bipolar disorder, fibromyalgia, depression, autism, attention deficit disorder. You don't hear any of this stuff in the news at all. Now, think of this, endogenous pharmacotherapy. What if you could make a pain reliever 40 times more powerful than heroin? You can. Okay, it's called endorphins. Okay, what if you were able to make the greatest anti-inflammatory called cortisol? And you can. You have an endogenous, a built-within pharmaco system. Now, brain plasticity refers to the remarkable property of cerebral neurons to change their structure and function in response to experience. Wait a second. Think of that. If your brains are firing in an anxiety state, there is a way that you could reprogram your brain to fire. So if you hear, bam, big old explosion, okay, and you're used to cars backfiring and everything, it's no big deal. But if you are freaked out from bombs going off, you might be hiding underneath your chair. Okay, so your reaction to that stimuli, okay, is really dependent on what you view the stimuli as. Okay, does that make sense? And you can change it. Basic research and a major focus of neurorehabilitation following brain disease. So this is the brain. Now, the small brain on the back, the cerebellum, you can see that thing that looks like a tree? That actually is called a tree. It's called the arbor vitae, the tree of life. Now, the way the brain works, 80% of the neurons are inside that little brain. Now, that little brain, they used to call it the reptilian brain or things like that. But every time you move, you're getting stimulus to that brain. And that brain controls the frontal lobe. It literally does. That's the stimulus. It's amazing. That frontal lobe is anxiety, stress, depression, impulse control. It's hugely important. So does that mean that if you have altered input to that cerebellum, you're going to have altered frontal lobe function? Yes or yes? Okay, we're talking really basic common sense. So if somebody has anxiety, stress, and depression, you're going to look for only 3 things. You're going to look for physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress. Does that make sense? Because the body's responding correctly. Now, the frontal lobe, this part up here that's programmed by the cerebellum, attention and memory, impulse control, spontaneous behavior, sexual behavior problems, reduced sexual interest. Frontal lobe damage on the left is pseudodepression. Frontal lobe on the right, psychopathic. Now, when you look at it, pseudo, Do you know why they can't say it's depression? Because this is just one source, and it can't be this. It can't be that there's a mechanical distortion in the brain. So when I get somebody, and this is with like attention deficit disorder or impulse control or anxiety, and I had 3 of those people today out of the 7 new patients, and I said, look, you know, your brain and body are responding correctly based on the stimuli. And, you know, you see them like this and say, yeah, we just got to change the input. Okay, you don't have lack of chemicals. You don't have altered brain chemistry. There's no difference in brain chemistry of somebody that's a severe psychotic and someone with a normal brain. There is abnormal input. There is abnormal proprioception. There is abnormal gut-brain connection. Again, transcending cognitive scientists. Recent studies from neuroanatomical behavior and imaging studies have profoundly changed the view. The cerebellar function is not just for motor control. Viral transneural tracers have demonstrated that cerebellar output reaches vast areas of the neocortex, including prefrontal and posterior parietal cortex. Non-motor functions. So does that mean, is this why we give cross-crawl exercises to people with anxiety? Is this why we tell them to walk barefoot in the grass or the hard sand so they get symmetrical stimuli? Always. Why do we recommend breathing, diaphragmatic breathing? Because that little 3-pound brain burns about 80 to 90% of the body's oxygen. For centuries, only 10% of the brain volume, but 80% of the total brain neurons in that little tree of life, in that little arbor vitae. That cerebellum is amazing. Cerebellum plays a complex role in executive function, creativity, attention planning, emotional regulation. Have you heard that the cerebellum is involved in schizophrenia? It's involved in Tourette's, autism, Parkinson's, addictions, obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, bipolar disorder. That little brain in the back. Where is that brain programmed from? It's programmed from movement and sensory stimulus. They all synapse in that cerebellum. Now, what if that cerebellum gets its nutrients through cerebral spinal fluid? Let's say that you've had a trauma, reverse curve, forward head carriage, and that cerebral spinal fluid is produced inside of the brain. Does that mean that there's going to be an interruption of it? Absolutely. We see in severe cases of neck trauma and head trauma, the cerebellar tonsils, it's called Chiari formation, start to poke through this large hole. Do you know how you say large hole in Latin? Don't say foramen magnum. Yeah, large hole. You know, but you got to say it in Latin so we keep it separate from the regular people. Okay, yeah. So if that pressure builds up in the brain, and that pressure, the cerebral spinal fluid, it needs to have a flow. This is why exercise is so beneficial. Angiogenesis, that means it builds blood vessels. Neurogenesis, that's the nervous system is being built. Synaptogenesis, that's the connection between the nerves. And a synthesis of the neurotransmitters. Amazing. Now, this is the weird thing, the gut-brain connection. If you go to any psychiatrist and the psychiatrist is not saying how many bowel movements a day, let's check your gut flora, let's check your stool, when was the last time you had antibiotics, all of which damage your gut flora, okay? Now, you have one nerve. It's called the vagus. No, not Vegas, baby. Vagus. Okay. It does all the activity in the gut. Okay, does the movement of the food, does the secretions from the stomach, does the absorption through the small intestine. I mean, everything this one nerve does. That's only 10% of its function. 90% of the vagus's nerve function is sensory. 90% of its function is sensory. And this blew me away when I found that out. So that means that your environment, you're only alive because you're able to put stuff in your mouth and break those nutrients from amino acids from the proteins, fatty acids from the fats, and carbohydrates from the sugars, or usable sugars from the carbohydrates. You need those raw materials. And depending on the environment you're in, you need that sensory input to the brain so that you can adapt. So it's called the gut-brain connection. This is where neurotransmitters are produced. It 95% of the body's serotonin is found in the bowels, and it's supposed to be a feel-good hormone. So if you want something to help with serotonin, if you want something with neurotransmitters, you look for abnormal gut function and restore that. This is a crime. We're seeing multiple kids. I just got another kid in today with ulcerative colitis. I mean, if I showed you 4 caribou with all baby caribou with ulcerative colitis, would you want to give them steroids and antibiotics and anti-inflammatories? No, you'd want to find out what's wrong. And this, we got a gut-brain connection. So can you see with inflammatory bowel disease or some type of gut disorder that it's going to lead to anxiety, stress, depression, impulse control, attention deficit disorder? You got to check both. The gut-brain microbiome axis. Wait a second. The bacteria inside of your gut that produce the B vitamins that are essential for reversing cancer or disease and immune system. If that gut isn't healthy, that means the brain isn't healthy. The gut-brain connection is vitally important. So when I was at the Chinese market in Thailand last week, and I'm getting everything I can. I got a little bit of alligator. I got some insects. Okay, I'm getting healthy bacteria. No, they were good. They were crunchy. Yeah, but it was fun. And by the way, if you find a guy with a hammer and a stick and you see that thing on on the internet, yeah, I tried it. My arms went numb for about 5 minutes, but I think the guy actually knocked some sense into my spine. Okay, so psychobiotics and manipulation of gut bacteria. The probiotic and prebiotic effect on emotional, cognitive, systemic, and neurovariables relevant to health and disease. Is this why when they do fecal transplants in autistic patients that they notice a massive difference? This is why we recommend colonics to get healthy colon, about probiotics, prebiotics, fermented foods, that there's a direct connection between gut-brain. Does this mean that when you look at those warning labels on the Z-Pack, okay, and people have been down in Purell everywhere because anything you put on your hands is going to get into your skin, okay, they're down in antibiotics every time they get a sniffle. This destroys the gut flora. What's that going to do? It's going to cause anxiety, stress, and depression. The steroids. Now, cortisone, hydrocortisone, prednisone, you're looking at rashes to asthma. Corticosteroids increase risk of suicidal behavior and neuropsychiatric disorders. And how many people are taking a steroid for rheumatoid arthritis and wondering why they have anxiety? How many people are taking it for inflammatory bowel disease and wonder why they have it? I mean, it's just crazy. Sugar. What is genetically modified high fructose corn syrup do to the funguses and yeast in your digestive tract? It feeds them. Okay, and this literally creates an imbalance. 58% increased risk of depression if you're on processed foods. I mean, crazy. And this one here, increased interest in gluten and casein-free diets. We put everybody on this right at the start, particularly if we see a inflammatory bowel disease or if we see a leaky gut, because when you get proteins in the bloodstream that aren't tempered by digestion, the immune system freaks out, okay, and it's going to build antibodies towards those proteins. Now, gluten and casein, those proteins look really similar to stuff that can damage the thyroid, they can damage the adrenal glands, they can damage the pancreas. So just gluten-free, dairy-free for about a month and a half, because it takes about a month and a half to have the gut heal. It really does. But the gut will never heal unless you're addressing the physical, chemical, and emotional stress. Exercise. Why does exercise help? It helps symmetrical stimulus. It helps oxygen get to the brain. Now, blood pressure drugs, do those help oxygen to the brain or slow it down? I say it that way because people will say, well, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. Dude, you're slowing down the pump. You're slowing down oxygen to the brain. Okay, this should be like basic, 101. Okay, so we just got to change. Now, how do you reprogram it? So you're going to identify and fix the physical stressors. You're going to identify and heal the gut. We're going to change every little aspect of life, but let's reprogram it. Now, when we know that the brain can be reprogrammed in the subconscious through repetition, not belief system. I mean, affirmations help, okay, but I'm not good at affirmations because if I feel like crap and I'm saying I am healthy, I'm dynamic, it's hard for me to bullshit myself, okay? I mean, I'm telling you, after a 20-hour flight, sitting in the seat was pretty comfortable though. After a 20-hour flight, I'm not feeling real perky, okay? But I'm not going to say I'm feeling perky. Neurolinguistic programming, you don't have to feel it. You just have to do it. It's like practicing tennis. You just practice over and over and you get better at it. Okay, so it involves body posture. Why body posture? Well, body posture changes the influence to the cerebellum. Breathing. Why breathing? Well, that little 3-pound brain burns 90% of the body's oxygen. Volume and intonation, that imprints it. So you're not reading these affirmations like, I am healthy, I'm dynamic, I'm enthusiastic. No. I mean, it's literally, I am healthy, I'm dynamic. But where did the I am come from? Anybody in here read any religious texts? Bible, Torah, Quran? Yeah, front part of that. Great story. Moses talking to the burning bush. Burning bush gives us some fantastic info, and he could build a whole society around it. He says, Bush, this is great. What do I call you? What does the bush say? I am that I am. Okay, so it's powerful. What does Christ say? I am the truth. I am the light. I am the way. So I am is called the Moses Code. There's a lot of power to it. Okay, so it's literally, I am healthy. I'm dynamic. I am vibrant. I am strong. I am healed. And you do this, and we recommend it 10 minutes, 3 times a day, but you need it has signals. Because if you can master your emotions, you change the chemicals your brain secretes. So if I show you a picture of a puppy dog, okay, and you thought, that dog is going to be a pain in the butt. It's going to chew my shoes, crap on the carpet. Okay, stress hormones are released, and that's going to shut blood supply down to the gut, put you in a stress state, raise your adrenal glands, and shut down your. But if I show you a picture of a puppy, and you thought, oh my God, that's my best friend. I'm going to cuddle. It's amazing. Okay, dopamine and serotonin. So I'm just showing you a picture. It's really based on the stimulation of your brain on what you're going to associate with it. Okay, and think of if we're driving to Uncle Harold's house, and you know what Uncle Harold's like, you know, and you're thinking, you know, man, we got into it last Christmas. Okay, I'm going to say this, he's going to say that. He's probably watching the president's address, and he's going to be all excited for it. Okay, so that's a delusion. It's not actually happening. You're in the car, but you're emotionally and chemically living that event, and that alters your physiology. So if you can master your emotions, you change the chemicals your brain secretes, and that alters your response to it. I like doing neurolinguistic programming. I do it every day. I mean, because when I'm driving the brutal 10-minute commute, I know, I really it's Friday, I drive an hour and a half down to Mexico, or Thursday, but you know, hey, most of the time I'm driving 10 minutes to work. But if I'm driving here and I'm thinking about an employee or a job or work or a patient or something, okay, that's delusional. So I catch myself and I go in, I am healthy, I'm dynamic, I'm vibrant. I actually say, I'm connected to the healing source of energy. God's love flows from God through me into my patients. 100% of the people I touch receive that healing energy. I am accurate. I am brief. I am strong. I have endurance. So I say that over and over and over. So when I get out of my truck and I get here, by God, I'm on fire. You know, you're vibrating at a higher level. So master your emotions and you change the world. Now, this sheet that we have is 2 boxes. The box of words on the bottom are self-talk words that 100% of people have, they'll use if they've had a chronic injury or illness. Now, what I should have done is wipe out that bottom box, because most people have already mastered that. Now, meditation, huge. What does meditation do? It stimulates that parasympathetic nervous system. It has a calming effect. MIT, meditation can change the structure of our brain. It changes cortical plasticity, cognitive and emotional processing well-being. Isn't that odd? Meditation helps. Breathing helps. Neurolinguistic programming helps. Healing of the diet helps. What are we doing? We're addressing the physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. So when we talk about these 5 keys, the proper nerve supply, you've got to clear that, because not just because, the subluxations. This is why I had a bunch of doctors say, oh, you think the spine's involved in everyone? Could be, should be checked, at least. Since the central nervous system controls and coordinates every function of the body, yeah, I think you should check it. That's a physical stressor. Regular exercise. Why? For cerebellar stimulation, for neurogenesis. So you're regenerating nerves, you're regenerating blood vessels. Proper nutrition. Why? Because you're going to build your body out of this stuff. Okay, you build your body out of crap, you're not going to have a healthy body. Sufficient rest. This is when your body regenerates in prayer and meditation. I mean, it seems too simple. But when you look for the actual cause, you look at the physical, chemical, emotional stress and know that you could reprogram your brain, bam, you're there. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, because it works only 100% of the time. Now we're going to get into an area that's going to be challenging. And so I always do this. I say goodbye, YouTube, and we'll be back next week for some really cool, exciting health information. And goodbye, Facebook.